What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of Sport Exposure Podcast. As you know, Sport Exposure is here to create a safe space for student athletes, past, present, and future, and really expose our sport stories, our sport journeys to inspire the next generation of student athletes. Today, I have Nyla Pollard here to tell her story. How you doing?
I am amazing.
All the way from Oklahoma. Way across the country. So tell me a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. So I actually grew up playing basketball. I actually went to Princess Anne. So played 4 years there and then went to William & Mary.
Okay.
So also played 4 years there. Had a great experience. Yeah, was a 4-year starter and then moved to Oklahoma.
We'll get into that later because I know that's a drastic change.
It was.
So before we get into it, here at Sport Exposure, we're all about celebrating triumphs and learning from our defeats. When you hear that motto, what comes to mind when you think about your sport journey?
Yeah, so much. First, I love that motto a ton. And it's amazing because actually the theme at my church right now is damaged but not destroyed. And I think that ties in so much to my sport experience because we go through so much stuff that does damage us, right? But like damage isn't necessarily a terrible thing. It builds character, it builds resilience, depending on how you look at it. Yeah, but never destroyed, you know, and it just propels us into what's next. So I love what you're doing. This is so exciting.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So where did sports start for you, for Nyla? Where did it all start?
Yeah, at like 5 years old, playing rec league basketball. Okay. So we started playing basketball there and then just never looked back. I always wanted to be an actress too, though. So
okay, you got other skills, huh?
A few. Yeah, so I was always like doing both. But then once I got to high school, and basketball was really serious, it was like one or the other. So I chose basketball. And then we kept going since then. And it led me to amazing places. So I wouldn't change a thing.
Right, right. And being at Princess Anne, y'all were known to be on top for a very long time. And still.
Yeah, true.
What was that like?
Yeah, man. Great question.
Because it's one thing to be on top. It's another thing to stay on top.
Yeah.
And the training in between, I know, is no joke.
Yeah, no.
So talk about your high school experience, because I feel like you got a different experience versus another student athlete because y'all were training at a very high level at a very early age.
100%. I will say, for me especially, it was rough. It was, you know, and I'm a very like optimistic person. So whenever I look at a situation, I always love to see the bright side of it. And it was rough. Still didn't see it. Right. And I saw it in hindsight. So like when I went to college, I found that like, oh, this training and practice is easy for me. Whereas everyone else that's coming in, especially other freshmen, are struggling to get acclimated to this new space. They're struggling, even some upperclassmen. This is difficult for them. But it was easy for me. So I became grateful for the experience because I was like, oh, yeah, we were training hard. Yeah, I was about to cry. Yeah, it was ridiculous to me. But it actually was building me for the next level. And I just couldn't see that in the middle, right? So yeah, I became grateful for it. And I was a 4-year starter in college. And I just know that like that was prepared me.
Right. Mm-hmm. So during those 4 years as a high schooler though.
Yeah.
Balancing training at that level. Because I would like to say that y'all were training at a collegiate 100%. Level. And you're balancing school. Mm-hmm. And you're balancing GPA, where it's important in high school to get to college, to get to the next level. What was that balance like for you?
I think the school aspect wasn't as difficult. I've always just been a lover of school. I think the side of resilience on the athletic side was hard. There were so many times where I was like, I'm about to transfer, or I'm about to leave, or I'm about to go act. Like there were so many moments where I was ready to be out of there. You know,
what kept you?
That's a great question. I think it's hard for me to give up. And I think my parents just kind of saying like, no, you can do this. Like whatever you want to do, we'll support you. But like you can do this, you know? And I'm so glad I did. You know, I think it builds so much in you that doesn't just end when you stop doing sports, right? Like you learn resiliency and it continues.
We learn so many skills.
Yeah. Yeah. So mainly that. But there were so many moments where I contemplated. I'm just glad I stayed the course.
What was your lowest moment in high school?
Sheesh.
Where you were just like, I don't know if I could do this.
Yeah.
I'm a very optimistic person too, but sometimes it's a little hard to see the brighter side.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about a time in high school where you were at a really, really low moment.
Oof. The first one that came to mind, I remember, because it was a tournament. I think it was one of the Christmas tournaments at the Booplex. Yep. Yeah. And I don't remember exactly what happened in the game, but I remember I made some mistake. And I always felt like my mistakes were like, harped on. You know, every player has a different experience.
Right. They do. Especially with a coach like that.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm like, sorry, not to talk about you. But yeah, but I just remember it was just so harped on. And I remember just feeling so like beaten down and like downtrodden. And I was just like, do I suck at this? Like, what is the problem? And I just remember leaving there and being like, I'm done. Like, I was so ready. Like, I went to my parents and I was like, either I'm switching schools, like I'm done playing basketball. Like, this is too much. This is just too much. And I remember there were literal like weeks of contemplation of like, where should we go next? Because both of my older siblings play basketball too. And they went to Cape Henry. And one of them actually started at PA and then she transferred. So I was like, I could do that too.
Right.
But when it really just came down to the wire, we decided not to. And we stayed and we saw it through. And I don't know, things would have looked so different. But I just remember being in that moment and thinking, this is right.
You said one thing I want to pull out. Every athlete has different experiences with coaches. Mm-hmm. Especially playing at the level that you played at.
Yeah.
And I can say that I've been that player a few times on a few teams where my mistake versus her mistake is not the same mistake.
Yeah.
And my mistake may not be let go till 3 games later. Yeah. Versus her mistake could be gone in the next minute.
Right.
So talk about being that player and what type of it's a different type of mental approach you have to have.
It is.
And I had to learn to just take out what the coach was saying to me and not how he was saying it to me. And that took a long time.
Wow.
So what got you through that? Because a lot of student athletes, some may not be able to handle that. And some may be comparing them to, everybody has a different walk. This is sports.
Yeah.
I don't care what sport you play. Every athlete is going to have a different experience with each coach.
Right. That's so true. Yeah. And I think I experienced both sides of the coin to where in high school, I felt like mine was the one that got harped on for 3 days or 3 games. And then in college, mine was the one that got forgotten in a minute. Right. So I experienced both. And I think in high school, for me, I think I had to literally train my mind of submission. Right. So like, what is submission? Submission means you're literally submitted to the mission. So it's like, if I chose to come to this program, if I chose to stay at this school,
this is what comes with it.
This is what comes with it. What is the coach's plan? What does he see fit? Like maybe my role right now, I might get yelled at, but I still need to be an encourager. I still need to be a leader. I still have to do these things. And I'm such a lover of people. So I'm like, I want what's best for the team, you know? And so it's like, okay, if I have to get yelled at, whatever.
I'll take one for the team.
You know? And so I was just so grateful when those roles reversed in college. And I witnessed other people being those 3-game players, right? And hated that for them because I knew how that felt. But I was also able to encourage them through that, right? So yeah, everything gets used.
Came full circle. So fast forward to, what was your recruitment like?
Yeah, so my process was a little different. So actually, I played with Boo Williams with Coach Jay's team. And I got my first offer from William and Mary. And that was crazy.
My first offer came from Coach Jay too.
Really? Aw, doing your thing. Love that guy. But yeah, my first offer was actually from William and Mary in the summer. And then later that fall, I actually committed. And
How
this
did
was
you know
my
so fast?
sophomore year? Was this my sophomore or junior year? So it was a really quick turnaround. I don't know.
I was going to say, how were you so... Because some student athletes, that's a very troubling process.
Yeah.
They get one and may make for another that may or may not come.
Right.
Or they might want to wait, or they want to immediately commit. So what was your thought process?
I remember they offered me, and then a few months into the process, I remember them telling me like, hey, we actually have another offer out for this other player. And like, they're also considering. So I think, and I don't know if it was true or if they were just playing with me, but they're like, hey, this is kind of timely. Like, it's you or her. And I remember I did feel a little bit of pressure, but also diving into it with my family. I was like, great academic school,
Absolutely.
Right? Like they actually want me. And that's a huge thing in the sports process. A lot of times people want to go where they want to go, but it's like, no, who wants you? Because that's going to affect your experience, right? Like how much time you play, how much the coaches are invested in you,
how they treat you,
where you're wanted, you know? Yeah. And I knew they wanted me a lot. So all factors considered, I was like, this is and I get to be home. Like this is my last stint of playing basketball and I've played this my whole life. My parents will get to drive an hour down the street to watch me play every home game, you know? So all factors considered, I was like, okay, let's just do it. So it was early, but it was right.
Yeah. And fast forward to as a freshman. You did mention early on that your athletic transition wasn't as hard because of the training that you went through as a high schooler. What about the academics? Because you did go from, well, you said you've always loved school.
Yeah.
And Women Mary's tough.
Yeah.
From what I hear.
Yeah. No, and I hear tons of different perspectives because it is a tough school. So in my experience, I actually took one sociology class. I remember my freshman year, and I fell in love with it. So I actually decided my major freshman year, and everybody was like, what are you going to do with a sociology degree? What does that even mean? And I had no idea. I just knew that I loved learning about it. So I was like, I'm going to major in it. Kind of go with the flow kind of person.
Whatever works.
So I immediately knew and just like loved it even more. So I ended up double majoring just because I had extra time at the end of my like athletic or college career. So it was a smooth transition there too, honestly.
And you also said that you were the player that kind of got overlooked when it came to mistakes, which is a blessing. I'm glad. I love that for you.
I deserved it.
You worked for that. You earned that. So let's talk about your athletic career and just really balancing the two at such a higher level. I mean, it's high level high school, which you played at too, but collegiate, it goes from, I like doing this, we're doing this for fun, I'm good at it, to this is a job.
Right. Yeah. And that's a huge part too. I think even when it comes to time management is realizing that as a student athlete, a lot of your time management is given to you. Like, okay, from this time to this time, you're going to lift. From here, you're going to class. From here, you're going to practice. From here, you're going to study hall. So like, it's all given to you. And I think really just being intentional with that time, which I'm grateful that I adopted early on because it's so easy to go to study hall and have fun.
That's what I'm saying. I didn't do anything in study hall. I'm not afraid to say I didn't do a thing. Yeah. So how early did you adapt that though? Like as soon as you got there, you said you loved school, so you might have been,
like it was kind of enjoyable to me.
Wow,
so like it was a little different in that way. Yeah,
that's dope.
Yeah,
everybody can't say that, especially not at school. And you said when you went to, you did your work when you went to study hall.
I did.
You used it wisely. I was on my phone, chit-chatting about practice, talking about my coach.
That's so funny. Yeah. But I will say, so like, I've also always been like this straight A student. Like I graduated high school with the 4.0 and then I graduated.
Oh, that changes the, okay. The whole conversation. You're true to this. You've been true to this.
Yeah. I remember I actually got my first C ever in college. And I was so distraught. Like I was so annoyed. And I was
just
like,
one?
It's just one. Yeah.
Okay. Well, C's get degrees.
They do.
Worked for me.
But it was in that moment. I was like, how dare you? So yeah, that was kind of my outlook on it. That's kind of.
And let's talk about some of the things that you went through as a student athlete on the court side.
Yeah.
Because did you have a coaching change? Or it came right after you?
Right after me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So talk about you're adapting to different personalities. I can tell that you're a people person. I can just feel it. But talk about the things that, because you go through a lot as a student athlete, especially at that level, adapting to different personalities, coaching styles, different coaching styles, different coaches and their coaching styles, environments. It's a lot. And just really, like I said, it's a job. So you have to take it serious at all times. So it seemed like you did a hell of a job if you were a 4-year starter. So talk about that.
Yeah, no, but your point is so real. So typically I had the same head coach the whole time, but every year there were different assistants. And, as a player, you work with the assistants more than you work with the head coach. Right. So having to adapt to those changes was definitely trying at times because coaching styles are different. So I had some who were like my best friends and I had others that it was just really difficult to mesh with. And they were my position coach and they would tell me things that didn't necessarily resonate with me. And so having to learn how to kind of, like you said earlier, take what they're saying, not how they're saying it, and try it out, like see how it works. I feel like was a huge learning curve for me. Because then when I didn't try it, now I'm sitting down, it's like, okay, it's like what I think versus what you think and trying to find that balance in between. So,
right. And even on your personal life as a woman, we're adapting a lot in those 4 years. Where from body changes to mental changes to emotional changes to professional changes or trying to gear up for a professional career. What was that process like for you?
The first thing that immediately came to mind is how distracted I was, right? Like I think I had a good career, but I wonder how much more it could have been if I was less distracted.
What kind of distractions you had?
Yeah. And right before I get to that.
Before we get there.
My friends, it's crazy because literally, I think last week I was diving into the word distraction. And when I really broke it down, I was like, what does distraction mean? And it's literally distraction, right? And like traction is forward, advancement. And so distraction is literally keeping you from moving forward. So it's like, how much further forward could I have been if I didn't fall susceptible to this? So to answer your question, a huge part of it was boys. All up in them boys' faces, you know?
They ain't mean nothing good for you.
Nothing, not a thing, you know?
But that's one of those things that come with being in college, especially a student athlete. Because, I mean, it comes a little easier. I mean, as a woman, as for males too, you get more females and women tend to get more males than they are a distraction.
They are. And I think if I would have been able to zoom out and see bigger picture, it would have been, let's refocus. Like, let's keep the focus where it's supposed to be, you know? Because, so for example, I got all rookie team my freshman year, and that was really the only accolade on paper that I got. But I think there was just so much more in that space to where I could have been. There's one thing to be in the gym physically doing stuff, but also mentally, like, where are you? Like, that affects the game so much. And I was distracted a lot of times, you know?
And boys will do it every time. Learn something, kids. Learn something.
Stay focused.
And mentally, we go through a lot behind closed doors that some of us may or may not know about or speak about. Let's talk about some of your lows in college and some of the highs, some of the lows, some of those real troubling times that we're forced to mask because I still have a game tomorrow, or I still have practice to show up to, or I'm still team captain, team leader, team starter. At that, it's a whole different responsibility.
Absolutely. And it made me think too, I remember the first time I did get taken out of the starting lineup, and I was so offended because, no offense, but I felt like the person that I was getting replaced by, I was like, Coach, like, we're not seeing the same thing. Like, I have a lot to offer here. Like, what's happening, right? And that sounds simple in nature, but it was really playing with my mind because now there's this question of values. Like, do you not value me being here? Do you not see what I have to offer? Should I offer it at all? Right? You know how we get in our heads. So yeah, I think I remember that coming up, and I remember being like, all right, well, I'm gonna just stop doing it if they don't appreciate it. And that's not the attitude to have.
At all.
At all. You know, and I think I had to come to terms with, kind of like I was saying earlier, I had to come to terms with the fact that I'm submitted to this coaching staff. I'm submitted to this team.
To this process. So
it's less of how I feel and more of like, what is our collective goal, right? And what is my role in that? So if you see me coming off the bench, then when I come off the bench, I have to deliver for our collective goal, right? And then eventually I did get back in the starting lineup, but I think perspective is such a powerful thing that when we take control of it and we like intentionally shift it to how it's supposed to be, it changes everything.
I like that because a lot of us feel like you have to start, especially in college. Let's be honest. It's hard to be a starter in college. And a lot of us don't get the pleasure of being a freshman, a sophomore, a junior, and sometimes not senior.
Right.
But it's important that you take advantage of the time that you do get in the game, because even if you don't understand, our coach usually has a goal in mind that we probably not going to understand. That's why they're the coach.
Right. So true.
Yeah. And you have to really, like you said, shift your mindset. Even if I'm coming off the bench, you can still play decent minutes and do enough. You can do a lot. And even if you're playing 15 minutes.
Yeah.
It's a lot that can be done in a college game in 15 minutes. You get 40 minutes.
Yeah.
15 of those, like, maximize them. And it's not a bad thing to be coming off the bench. Because I was one of those players that, I mean, me and my coach used to. We used to go at it. But I could be starting. I could have a double-double, and I could say something and went back to my mistakes, get harped on. I could be benched for 2 games.
Yeah.
And even that, I had to shift my mindset to, I'm still going to cheer on my teammates and not just sit here or have an attitude, because they tell us all the time in high school and get recruited, like, your attitude is everything. And I feel that college tests that the most. Because coming into college, you go from being the best on your team to being everybody's good. And a lot of freshmen sit there first year. It's one of those things that every situation is different. Everybody's work ethic is different, but it's just one of those things you gotta wait your time. And that's what college athletics has taught me, that taking advantage of when it is your time.
Yeah. And the benefits of, even, especially in college, like, every team is scouting their competition. So if you're not on that first page, if you're not on that first 5 people, they're not going to have your scout down as much. So you actually have that competitive advantage as well, which I had to remind myself of, like, oh, they don't actually know me as in depth as they do when I start, you know? So also that benefit.
For sure. For sure. So how did you know what you wanted to do?
This is all fun to me. So I love career.
Okay.
I love this aspect. Yeah. So for me, I honestly didn't know at first. So I majored in sociology, and everyone was
and
like,
all the athletes do.
But, yeah.
Not no shade.
No.
But I'm just saying, put it in perspective, a lot of athletes do.
Right. And everybody was like, what are you going to do with that degree, Nyla? And I was like, I have no idea. So I would Google, and Google would tell me that people who major in sociology would do human resources, like HR. So I remember one summer looking up HR internships, and I found one at the NFL, but it had hundreds of applicants, and I didn't even have a resume.
A lot of us don't.
You know? So I hurried up and I put one together, and then I applied the very night it was due. And then I actually got a call back. I got interviews, and I ended up getting the position.
Dope.
And I was like, how did this happen? You know? And it's funny because in hindsight, like after the internship ended, I asked the person who interviewed me, I was like, how did I get this out of all the applicants? And you know what he said? He said in the interview, he's like, you just seem like someone that I don't want to sit next to in the office.
Yes, personality.
I was
personable.
Like, what? You know? And I feel like it taught me this perspective of like, your resume and your networks, these things are nice, but literally who you are matters in the workplace. Like there's no rules
at all. Of course, there's requirements and qualifications, but it really comes down to who you are as a person. Because you could be gold on paper and be a nasty individual.
Yeah.
And I don't want you next to me in my office.
Right.
I don't care what you can do, what's your expertise, how many places you've worked, and even what your references are. And back to what you're saying, and it's crazy that you said that because my experience at the NFL is when I learned that too.
Interesting.
So when I worked for the NFL Super Bowl in Miami, 2020, I'm just looking around. I'm real observant. Like everybody's just so cool. Like you would think that at that level, they're uptight, they're this, they're that, but they're normal people. And everybody I talked to said the same thing. Like, you know, you want to hire somebody that you actually like. Like, which is important. I don't care what your resume looks like. Do I like you? Are you a likable person? Do I feel that I can, like you said, sit next to you in the office?
Right.
And that just changed my entire perspective on everything. From the NFL on to now. I just started being nice to people. I mean, not to say that I was mean to anybody, but I didn't lead with my resume. I didn't lead with my background. I just lead with who I am as a person. And that was when I really had to, like, just be you, Michaela. Like, it's okay. Like, you think that to get in those rooms, that to get in the NFL room, you got to be somebody you're not. No. What got me in that position was just being myself.
Right.
And the same for you. So tell me what you saw at the NFL. You worked at the headquarters in New York?
No. So I got the internship. It was supposed to be at the films office in Culver City. Okay. And then COVID hit. Yeah. So I didn't even get to go in person.
That was the same year. Because I worked for Super Bowl February 2020. Wow. And COVID hit the next month.
Crazy. Wow. So right around that time. Yeah. And we thought they were going to cancel the internship, but they didn't. And a lot of companies did. So I was so grateful for that. But it was virtual. So at the time, it wasn't really an HR internship. It ended up being project-based. And I got to work a ton with player engagement, which is a department that I didn't even know existed.
Me neither.
Yeah. So once I learned about it, I was like, wait, this is what I want to do with my life, you know? So I got super passionate about it. And then when I came back to William & Mary that next semester, I said, we need a player, like student athlete development department, you know? So I actually went like boots to the ground working with the athletic department at William & Mary saying like, let's build this out. Like, how can we do this? We need this. So I actually started the infrastructure for it. And now 3-4 years later, they actually have a full blown department, which is so cool at the college.
That is so dope. We share a lot in common because I did the same thing for Georgia Southern.
That's so cool.
I worked as a student athlete development graduate assistant.
Wow.
And I basically built their program structure for everything because once again, at the NFL, I didn't know that there was a space where you really cared about athletes outside of their sport.
Right. Same.
And like I said, I've always been a person to speak highly and speak very bluntly about the things that I go into because my degree was in sports management. Okay. So I'm actually learning the ins and outs of sports. And my coach is treating me, this is not what's in the book. This compliance rule says this, and my coach, I was a kid in class, like, okay, let's shut up. Like, don't say that. Yeah. I've always been that person. So when I came to Super Bowl, player engagement, I had no clue what it was. But once I got there, I'm like, wow. I didn't even know. And at that time, it was still growing. It was still new. Now we're starting to see more student athlete development programs in schools. And it's so important going into what this is what this stemmed from, student athlete development, because it's so important to cater to that holistic health of student athletes outside of their sport.
It's so important.
It's so much that is just giving spoon-fed, put in front of us just for this ball.
Yeah.
The ball is going to stop bouncing.
The ball is a vehicle.
Eventually. Even at the NFL, I realized that these are grown men. And even this ball is going to stop. Like these are 30, 40-year-old men that when they retire or they get injured and have career-ending injuries, they never were a regular person.
Right.
And as an older person, just imagine what that transition is like.
Yeah.
And we're not catering to that. That's a problem for me. And fast forward to now, which is, of course, why I started the podcast, because there's so much that we go through. It is not even scratch on the surface. That is so important when it comes to being a student athlete, because we didn't know what we didn't know. Like, and if I can help the next generation of student athletes to navigate the systems that I had a hard time navigating, this is what these conversations are for, right? It's crazy you say that. Go ahead.
I wanted to say, and that's so real too, because I think for me coming back to Women Mary and not seeing it there and saying, not only do I need this, but all of my fellow student athletes need this. It taught me that just because I don't see something doesn't mean that I have to wait for somebody else to do it. Like I can actually be the one to institute it, right? And I think that's led me so far into even my entrepreneurship journey now.
I was gonna get to that next.
Yeah, for real though, of seeing like, oh, I see a gap. My perspective is on purpose. Like there's a reason other people may not see it the way that I see it. Like I'm the one who's supposed to fill that gap, right? You know? Yeah.
So from the NFL, you came back. What year was that for you? Junior
year. Yeah.
Okay. So going into your senior year, what did Nyla want to do with her life?
Yeah. So I picked up another major, which was elementary education. And I considered teaching for 2.5 seconds.
I was going to say, you'd be great at that.
You know, I think so too. But they didn't pay enough. That's just the reality of it. And I loved it. Like I had to do a full year of student teaching and it was a time of my life. But I was like, no,
can't do it.
You know, it didn't resonate with me. So I ended up sticking with HR. I want to plug this actually, because I know a ton of student athletes watch this.
Please.
There's an organization. It's called the Make a Play Foundation. And you heard of them?
Yes, please. Tell me more. Tell me more. Yes.
I love them. Yeah. So I'm on their junior board of directors as well. But they are so fantastic. And essentially what they do is they prepare underrepresented student athletes for executive careers in competitive industries, right? So any student athlete of color who's interested in gaining an executive career after graduation. So I actually got looped in with them their first year of actually starting. So I was going through their preparation. There's like resume prep, interview.
With, Jaybird?
So I actually didn't do a core. They brought me right onto like the junior board. Yeah. But I did, one of their partners was Anheuser-Busch. So I actually went through an interview process with them just because it was my senior year. And then I got an offer from them. And that's ultimately what moved me out to Oklahoma. But so I went and doing HR for a Fortune 500 company with like one experience on my resume.
You know? Yeah. I love what Make a Play is doing. I've been following, been watching. I just admire the fact that they are creating opportunities for us, specifically for us, and setting us up for the next level, because that's half the battle right there.
So true.
Just the preparation or just an opportunity. Because that's another thing. Kids don't realize that it is so hard just to get a toe in the door. Yeah. And keep it in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And being a Black student athlete or being a student athlete, period, just knocks us down to the end of the list. So it's just like we're constantly fighting. So fast forward to Oklahoma.
Yes. Oklahoma.
Tell me about it. That's a drastic change coming from good old VA.
You know, and it was honestly one of the most difficult transitions I've ever done in my life. You know, I think high school to college was a little easier because I was only an hour from home, but going halfway across the country, I knew nobody. I was doing a brand new job that I didn't really know. Like everything was new. And it was lonely. It was hard. Yeah. I remember my first 3 months being like, what am I doing here?
Girl, I know all about it.
What am I doing
I didn't go
here?
halfway across the country, but I was in the middle of nowhere.
And Oklahoma felt like that. Yeah. Like I didn't know anything, you know? And I'll say like it strengthened my relationship with the Lord because I was like, this is all I got. you know? But other than that, it was really hard.
And that was actually when I realized that as well. Because you don't have nobody. Yeah, you're put in situations, and back to what you were saying earlier, I feel like a lot of things that we go through is preparation or training for where we're supposed to be. And it may not always look like what we want it to look or feel the way we want it to feel during that moment, but there's always a bigger purpose for something.
Yeah.
It's nothing that we go through. I say all the time, it's nothing that I've been through that didn't prepare me for this.
Yeah.
May not have seen it in the time, but it's just like in those transition moments when you got to learn to just put your head down.
Right.
Just do what you got to do because you're learning something.
Yeah.
In those moments when I was in the middle, I learned so much about myself.
Same.
And
Same.
That's a hell of an adjustment. It's not for everybody.
No, it was major. And it's so difficult too, even being a Black woman, right? So like even first going to William and Mary, I think the Black student population is maybe like 5%, 7 max. You know, like it's very small. But then going, and I worked for Anheuser-Busch, which is a beer company, right? So you don't see a lot of Black people in the beer industry. That's just not a major thing.
Right.
So even that adjustment of saying like I'm comfortable here. Like I've existed in these spaces my whole life, but I'm also aware that I am quite the minority in every space that I occupy, you know? So even getting adjusted to that, I didn't recognize that where I was in Oklahoma, in Tulsa, like there was Black Wall Street. There was all this other...
Very historical.
Like I didn't even know that. And now I've been there 2 years and now I love that place. Like I wouldn't leave it for the world right now.
Wow.
Yeah. So things change.
But let's talk about being a minority and a minority woman at that. Because that comes with challenges in itself that I don't think that a lot, we hear about it.
Yeah.
You see it, you have conversations, but when it's you, it's a whole different ballgame. And that was one of the things that I had to learn at Georgia Southern because I was one of the only Black women administrators on the entire athletic staff.
Yeah.
And the adjustment was hard coming from, I was a hometown kid too. Hampton High, Hampton University, HBCU culture. And I go to a PWI in the dirty South, in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by 15 miles of cotton fields.
Wow.
And it's kind of like, it was a lot of fighting imposter syndrome because you feel like you're not supposed to be here because I'm the only one.
Yeah.
But in reality, like what you were saying, I feel like God placed us in position because for a reason. I was there to break the barrier.
Yeah.
Right? So talk about adjusting to that and what that process was like for you, because that could be a make or break situation for a lot of women.
100%.
And that's one of the reasons why I stayed in it. Because by the grace of God, I have the strength to go through it. So I went through it. It was not easy at all, but I just always thought about the women behind me or the Black and brown girls that want to be in this space. Let me make it easier for them.
Yeah, that's so important. That's so important. And it was a make or break. I remember, so I'm super passionate about DEI, which is like diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yes.
And when I got to Anheuser-Busch, I recognized like, okay, that department was a little bit fresher, if you will. And I had a really amazing opportunity to strengthen it. So I actually began this like, what would you call it? Essentially, it was a partnership with the local organization that works with the formerly incarcerated. And I was giving them job opportunities within our organization.
Dope.
Right? Yeah,
Super
it was amazing.
dope.
I was so excited. I was like, this is what they need. Like, no recidivism. Like, we're going to be the change we want to see. Right? And I learned at first that that wasn't as received by the people that I was sharing it with, even though I knew it was a good idea. Right? But realistically, I was sharing it with a ton of people who didn't look like me. And they didn't see incarceration the same or the opportunities after it, you know? And I remember that bothering me so much to the point where I was so offended because it felt like my baby at that point. And I was just so grateful. The person who actually leads DE&I at that organization was a really close mentor of mine. He also looked like me. And he affirmed me and how good that was of an idea and just to keep going. And I remember being like, okay, I have to separate myself from what I'm doing here. I can't get so tied up in it or else I'm going to be so, I am not my job. My job is what I do.
Right. It's very mentally draining if you let yourself get caught up in it.
It's so, yeah. So I don't even know where I was going with that, but all that to say, it's just what I had a heart for. But like you said, I think I was a change placed in that place. And then we did end up doing it. And it was great. It was a great program. And then everybody was like, this is amazing, Nyla. And I was like, I know.
I know. And you mentioned you had a mentor.
Yes.
And I think it's very important in those settings that you create at least one ally.
Yes.
Just all you need
Yes.
is one. And I'm grateful that my supervisor was a Black man. If I tell him to this day, if I had a white supervisor in that environment, I would not have made it.
Yeah.
And he poured into me, kept pouring. And that's one of the only reasons I stayed for as long as I did. And being in those environments as a young Black woman, trying to be a change, trying to be the change that you know that we need, especially pitching to people that do not look like us. They look at us like we're crazy. Yeah. Because they really can't relate. And that was another thing that I had to grasp. Like, you know, I'm different from them. I gave a lot of grace to them white people in Georgia Southern because they're not used to working with a Black woman. Especially not one of my caliber. That was another thing. They probably used to the ones just come in and sit here. No. And that was a huge eye-opener for me. Like, huge eye-opener. And I can only imagine what it was in Tulsa for you.
Yeah. And honestly, my mentor, I'm so grateful. So he was actually based in St. Louis, like somewhere different. And we would meet, I think it was every week or every other week. And those meetings were so crucial for my mental health. And sometimes it wouldn't even be about work. Oftentimes it would, but sometimes we would just hop on and he would just let me talk about life and he would talk back. So it wasn't even just a work mentor. He became this life mentor. Yeah. And it was so crucial. For one, me staying at the company, for me to continue to thrive, like not just exist there, but actually thrive and be able to like create impact and do what I know I could do there. So I'm just so grateful for him. And he always tells me to this day, because I've since left the company, but he's just like, you know, everything I did for you, the only thing I ask is that you send the elevator back down. Like when it's your turn, pay it forward. Like make sure it doesn't stop with you. Keep sending it down.
Yeah. Talk about the importance of mentorship, period.
Crucial.
Please.
Yeah.
For being a student athlete, and it doesn't stop there. Yeah. Especially in life, post-student athlete, if not more, because you're a post-student athlete. What has mentorship done for you personally?
Man, so much, you know, and I want to debunk too, like it is amazing to have mentors, I think, that look like us, but not just them. There's so many, right? And I believe in having mentorship or even wise counsel from so many different avenues, right? So like, yes, we have one for work, maybe one for life, maybe one for finance, maybe one for relationships. Like I'm such a firm believer in having a multitude of wise counsel. And I think it's propelled me so far. You know, I think the quote was true of like, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Yeah. You have to. It's actually so crucial, especially being young. Like, I think sometimes I have to recognize that, like, I don't know everything. And also, I'm the kind of person, I don't have to figure it out on my own.
I'm going to ask. Hello? I need help.
Seriously. I think I've said I need help more this year than I've ever said in my life. Yeah. And I realized I'm like,
proud of you for that.
Thank you.
I am, because I know how hard it was for me just to ask for help.
But unless I reveal what I need help with, no one's able to help me. They don't know what I need. And especially in this new chapter of my life, I needed so much help. And I had to ask for it. I had to be real about where I was and not think, oh, they're going to think less of me, or they're going to think I'm not who I portray to be. They're going to think perception. Get that out of your head.
What's real? You make it. Yeah. Right. And fast forward to now, you're an entrepreneur. Yeah. You're back in the sports space. Tell me more about your company.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm the co-founder and CEO of a sports technology startup. So it's called Ballin. And basically what we do is we use AI to automate the full scouting report for basketball coaches. So it's amazing.
Super dope.
It's super cool. Yeah. We know this process takes coaches 30 hours a week, if not more right now, scouting for that next game. What is my team going to, not my team, but my competition? You know, how do they play? What are they going to do? How do we beat them? So yeah, our AI watches and analyzes the entire game and gives them that full data-driven scouting report.
That saves
so much time. Yeah. Our motto is that we take it from 30 hours a week to just 3 hours a week. Because of course they'll still do their due diligence, but we do the rest.
How did you know you want to be a full-time entrepreneur?
That's a great question.
Corporate, yes.
Yeah. So I did both for about 7 months. And I didn't know at first. Entrepreneurship was not on my bingo card.
Mine either.
Yeah. I honestly went to, there's this 24-hour hackathon event. And I went there. They said, hey, if you have any ideas, pitch it, and then we'll work on it for 24 hours. And I'm an idea kind of person. So I had a notes app full of ideas. And I picked this one because I was like, sports is my expertise. Like, I know this, and it was a cool idea. So yeah, I pitched it. I actually met my co-founder, who's also my head of technology, at that event. And we worked on it for 24 hours. We won first place. We won a $2,500 prize. And then we just kept working on it and we kept getting grants. And then a few months later, we got a 5K grant. And then we got accepted into an accelerator program for startups. They gave us $70,000 and they took no equity, no interest. It's called Act House. They're amazing.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And you're dropping gems too, by the way. Listen up if you want to start a business. So how did you, I don't know where to start, because it's one thing to have an idea. And I admire anybody that takes an idea and really brings it to life. Mm-hmm. And that's not an easy process.
Yeah.
Especially working in sports. And back to what we were saying earlier, now is the time to create your own lane. Mm-hmm. Specifically in sports.
Yeah.
Because you know what's needed. You know where the lack is. And you know how to meet it because you were a student athlete, right?
So true.
So even with myself, I had to figure out, like, every space that I worked at, working in sports, I saw where there's a lack of something.
Yep.
And like, y'all really don't care about student athletes. Every level I went, y'all really don't care about athletes. Y'all really don't care about athletes. Y'all really don't care about athletes. Fast forward to now with the podcast. All right, let me create my own lane, right? It's not being done. So what was your thought process on that?
Yeah. And either they don't care or they just don't know. And that's our value add, is we have that locker room experience. We have that experience in practice.
So you can't tell me.
You can't, and I see things differently than you do, but that is the value that I bring, and sometimes it is valuable to bring that perspective to a corporation, and even get experience. And sometimes it's valuable to use it for yourself, and I've seen both sides of the coin now. And I love entrepreneurship. I'm so grateful to be doing this. And I'm sorry, what was the question?
I was talking about bringing an idea and bringing it to life.
Yes.
And creating your own lane and knowing a necessity. What was your process like?
And I think that goes back to even your question about entrepreneurship. About mentorship. Because I found, being placed in Tulsa, Oklahoma, I was surrounded by infrastructure that wanted to support me while building a business, and I found that there's so many cities that have similar infrastructure that actually support entrepreneurs. It's just a matter of getting acclimated and maybe doing research to see where it is. But even here in Virginia, there's so many things in Richmond. There's so many things in the 757 that are for entrepreneurs to build. And I didn't know these things existed, We
don't know what we don't know.
You really don't. So there's so many different things I found. But even going to that hackathon, learning, there's an organization called Build in Tulsa where the whole mission is to rebuild Black Wall Street. So they invest money, resources, time, everything, like workspace into entrepreneurs. It's just a matter of getting into that community, which is, so yeah.
Yeah. And how did you get the word out about your business?
Yeah. That's a good question. It was honestly a lot of first networking, like my network that I already had, which were a ton of coaches. So kind of sharing it with them, getting that like validation and interest. And then emails, cold emails, calls. I go to a lot of basketball games.
Networking.
100%, I'm like, hey, I'll come show you a demo. So I'm always working. There's not a time I'm not working.
Okay, that's entrepreneurship. Sis. Never stops.
It never stops. But you love what you do. And I understand the value because I'm such a people person, right? So kind of how you said earlier, like for me, my biggest thing is I care about the betterment of people more than I care about the bouncing of a ball. Like that ball is the vehicle, but like my aim, my purpose is the person, right? So even as I'm building Ballin, I care so much about these coaches. Like I know how much time it takes. I know that there's so many beautiful things that you need to be doing as a coach. And we just give them a ton of time back to do that. So yeah, my whole life is centered around people. This is just one of those avenues.
Super dope. Super dope. How do you think that being a student athlete or the skills that you learned as a student athlete helped you navigate through life after sports? And I'm sure it's plenty.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the first one that also came to my mind is networking. Networking is major, and I think especially, at least at my school, we had a ton of boosters and supporters and fans, even parents, even just local people.
Utilize your resources, kids, especially you're at a school like William and Mary.
Seriously.
Yeah, you have to.
You have to. And you don't know what comes of that, whether it's relationship, whether it's an internship, whether it's anything, like the networking is major. And I think that carries over both into entrepreneurship, but just life in general. They always say, what is it? Your network is your net worth. Mm-hmm. But yeah, get to know people and not just for what you can get, but genuine relationship building,
right.
Yeah, stuff like that is one major one. And then I would need to think about what the other one would be. Perspective is so major, right? And honestly, shout out to my dad, because he always used to say, coming throughout high school, I wasn't sure if I wanted to play basketball in college because it seemed scary. What? You work out every day? What? The workouts get harder?
Be scared.
What?
What? Be scared.
Like, what? I have to do all this schoolwork. So I remember telling him, I'm like, I'm not sure if I want to do this. And the advice he always gave me was, from 1,000 feet away, that mountain is going to look huge. But as you get closer to it, you're like, oh, it's just another step. It's literally just step by step. So like, you feel that now, but just have faith. Like, believe that as you keep walking, it's just something next that you do. And so I was like, okay. So I ended up doing it. And I was like, oh, you're right. Right? Like, I graduated college. I'm like, I'm at the top of this mountain.
I made it. Right.
You know, like, it's worth it. Like, don't give up along the way. You've come too far, you know? And I think that has translated so much into life and even entrepreneurship. There's been so many times where I have been crying, sliding down the wall. I am like, what am I doing? This is crazy. And I had to remember, don't give up. This mountain just looks so big because you're 1,000 feet away sometimes. Literally just take that next step, you know? So I think that advice has just been so golden in my life of knowing that, like, yeah, it is going to look big, but know that you're good, you know?
And that's one of those things that can be applied to all areas of life.
Mm-hmm.
Sports, entrepreneurship, if you work in corporate.
Yeah.
You're going to always have, life is going to throw some stuff at you regardless. And like you said, it's just one foot in front of the other. One day at a time, 1 hour at a time. We got to the point where I was breaking things down by the hour. But that's what worked for me.
Right.
Because I would I used to tell people, do not ask me about yesterday. Do not ask about tomorrow. Keep me in these 24 hours because it's going to overwhelm me.
Yeah.
And
that's so real.
You got to do what's best for you. Mm-hmm. Some people like to have their schedule for the week. At one point in my life, I could not.
Right.
Because it would overwhelm me. Yeah. Anything outside of today is Tuesday, do not ask me about Thursday. I have not got to Wednesday yet.
Right.
And I have not got to Tuesday yet. And that is okay.
That is.
Because you have to figure out what works best for you. Mm-hmm. And like we said before, translate those skills. Same thing for sports. Mm-hmm. It's going to be hard. Yeah. It's going to be rough. It's going to be challenging. But stay in between these 24 hours. Get through this workout.
Yes.
Get through this practice. Get through this game and then worry about the next game, right?
Yeah.
Don't even worry about next year. Because that's another thing with sports. We're just always constantly thinking about the next move or the next play. But same thing in life.
Yeah. And developing this attitude of gratitude, right? So even thinking,
that's a big one.
I don't have to go to practice. You get to go to practice. You know how many people don't get to go to basketball practice, whether it's high school or college? Like, you don't have to go lift. You get to go lift. What? You don't have to go to bed to get ready for the game. You get to go to bed to get ready for the game.
One of my mentors put me onto that a couple months ago. And that perspective has changed everything. Because it could always be worse.
What?
I'm complaining about practice.
You could have not got a scholarship.
I was just about to say, I could. My mom could be paying out of pocket. Yes. I probably wouldn't be here.
You know?
And being a student athlete, you have to think about those things because you're being paid a lot of thousands and thousands of dollars to get a piece of paper that could fast forward you and excel you in your life.
Yes.
And these are opportunities that not everybody gets, especially coming from our community.
2%.
That's a very factual state. Like that's a factual stat. Yeah. And when you look at it like that, like you said, gratitude. Like be thankful. Be thankful where you are right now.
Yeah.
Now. It may not look like what you want it to look like, but be thankful for your position, your situation, your coaching staff that you may hate, but you are still on scholarship.
Yes. Seriously.
And finally, Nyla, we talked about a lot. We talked about a whole lot. Very inspiring story. Finally, Sport Exposure is here to expose sport stories, sport journeys, and really the things that nobody ever told us. So what do you want to expose about sports?
Wow. Can I say 5?
Go ahead. Go for it, please. The more the better.
Because there's so much. I think the first thing I would especially say is to keep God first. And it sounds like such a cliche statement that sometimes we see in people's bios, but it's real, you know? And the reality too, in my experience especially, is that he wants to lead our steps. It's like, to what degree do we allow him to? You know, to what degree do we invest in that relationship? You know, because it is a relationship.
It comes back to submission too.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm eating it up, girl. I'm eating it up.
Like, keep him first in all things and he will guide your ways. It's true. It's just a principle, right? So even in sport and knowing that God does really work all things for the good of those who love him. So it's like in that, right? Like he will use everything. Nothing will go to waste. So even your experience in sport, what you've gained in sport, let him work it for your good. Like, don't try to just do it yourself, but like involve him, you know? Yeah. So I think that would be the number one thing because there's, like you said earlier, there's so many different perspectives and opportunities that sometimes only we can see. Yeah. You know? Yeah. So I think there's just so much he wants to reveal to student athletes specifically. And I'm just so excited for this space to continue to flourish based on that.
Yeah. Did you have another one? So you said you had a few. That was a good one. You got another good one?
Yeah. It's like I have so many. Really to stay the course, you know? Like, no, it is worth it. And we say a lot of the times, sports will take you places you would have never imagined. And it's true. It will take you places physically. It'll take you places emotionally. It'll take you
all of the above. May drag you through the mud a little bit. It's part of the process. Stay the course. Stay the course.
Stay the course. Like, don't give up. Like, that's just the encouragement that I really want to give because it's so easy to quit and give up when things get hard. You know, but I believe that how you do one thing is how you do everything. So it's like, see, even in this, that like you are being developed. You are being brought up to be the person that you're going to be for the rest of your life. Stay the course. Don't give up. Yeah, that would be my second one.
That was perfect, Nyla. Thank you so much for sharing your story. Thank you for stopping by. I hope that there's a student athlete out there that gains some insight, some knowledge, some motivation, some tips, whatever you need to get through your current situation from this story. Where can we find you and how can we reach you through Ballin?
Absolutely. So Ballin, our website is ballin.ai. You can also follow us on Instagram at ballin.ai. My personal Instagram is Nyla Capri, so NYLACAPRI. And I actually lead a student athlete ministry, which is really amazing. So yeah, I'm such a firm believer. It's where sports, faith, and their futures collide because they're not separate. They're all intertwined. And it's so important. So yeah, it's called Revise. So RHEVIS. But on Instagram, I should have spelled it that way.
That's what I care about. IG.
Yes, Revise on Instagram is RHE.VIS. And it's amazing. So student athletes, tap in. Yeah, it's really cool.
Perfect. Thank you so much again, Nyla. Did I create a safe space for you?
You did.
Good.
Thank you.
I'm glad that I did. That's what we're all about. We'll catch you guys on the next episode, y'all.